Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of The Ride Along. I am Jenna Williamson and I'm actually new to The Ride Along, but I'm very excited to get started with it. Today I would like to introduce a very close friend of mine. Her name is Lisa Spooner. She is a news anchor / reporter outside of Florida. She went to Texas A&M University where she majored in journalism, and she's been in Florida for about 10 years. So I'm really excited for everyone to get to learn about her profession today. So Lisa, can you just start with giving us an overview about your job and your career?
Sure. So, as Jenna just mentioned, I'm an anchor and a reporter here at WBBH, which is the NBC affiliate in Fort Myers, Florida. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's on the West Coast. It's about 2 hours south of Tampa. And, I started my career in Texas, in Beaumont, as a reporter, and then went to Tyler, Texas, where I became an anchor. I was there for 5.5 years. And then I actually moved to Fort Myers, but with a different station, and then moved to Orlando with a national morning talk show before moving back to my current station where I've been for 6 years now.
Awesome. So can you start me at the very beginning of your journey when you knew that this is exactly what you wanted to do for the rest of your life?
Funny story, I majored in journalism at Texas A&M, but I didn't really know that that was what I wanted to do. I was going to go to law school. I had a down payment paid to, what's now Texas A&M Law School. That's where I was going to go. But in 2002, I won the title of Miss Texas, and I was constantly being interviewed, and I just happened to be at this appearance where there were a number of journalists from the Dallas area that were there at the time, and just kind of started talking to them, and they kept asking me questions like, why are you not wanting to go into this career? You've already done a lot of the hard work in the terms of getting a degree in it and then being on the other side of the camera being interviewed. So I kind of knew what to expect. And then I did a year-long speaking tour. And I kind of sat down and thought about it, and I was like, yeah, okay, maybe I should pursue this. They're obviously seeing something that I'm not, something I'm missing. So when I was done with Miss Texas, my husband was working in Houston. And so I just kind of drew a radius around Houston that said, okay, if I get a job within this 75-mile radius, I'll take it. And so I applied to all the Houston stations, which I didn't even get an interview because I didn't realize that was a humongous market. It was in the top 10, and I didn't have the experience for that. And Beaumont called, and I drove 72 miles one way for almost 2 years.
Wow.
Sometimes you just have to do what you got to do in order to make it work. And so for 2 years, I drove 75 miles one way, then got the offer in Tyler to anchor instead of report, and was another offer I couldn't turn down. And that one, I was driving 45 miles one way, and my husband was driving 70 miles in the other direction. And, every day was coming in, and it was something new. It's something exciting. And, when there's breaking news, the adrenaline that gets going, that was kind of when I figured out that I was not meant for a desk job. I was meant to be, an anchor and a reporter, because I loved that every day I had no idea what I was going to be covering that day. News is constantly evolving.
Okay, awesome. It really sounds like you love what you do. So can you tell me what is the most intriguing part of your job for you?
You get a front row seat to history. You get to be at these events as they happen, the good and the bad. When it was a sad story, but when the Pulse nightclub shooting happened in Orlando, I was sent out there. And so I'm standing there in line with David Muir and with Lester Holt. And, that was pretty exhilarating as a relatively young journalist, to be up there with these network anchors. And to see these scenes, like I said, firsthand. the flip side, a positive story, I was on the red carpet for the America's Got Talent finals last fall and getting to be there for that. So it really is, it's amazing that I get to see all of these and get these experiences firsthand instead of, just watching about it on TV or reading about it online.
So obviously when it's breaking news, you don't know that it's going to be an emergency or breaking news, but say that there isn't any and it's your day-to-day work schedule. Can you kind of tell me about what your shifts are, the hours you spend up there, if you actually have any crazy shift hours that you do often?
So I currently anchor the 4 p.m. and the 11 p.m. news. And so my schedule is a 3 p.m. till midnight shift. And I'll come in, and for that hour ahead of time before the 4 o'clock, I will read my scripts, ask my producer any questions, last minute questions that I might have. And then 10 minutes till 4, I have to be on the set. Then I have a relatively long break. Obviously, sometimes I get to fill in for the 5:30, and 6 o'clock newscast, which obviously makes my break shorter. But around 8:30, I will start writing they're called promotionals, but essentially they're kind of commercials that will run before our 11 o'clock newscast. One of them is 30 seconds, one of them is 15 seconds. And so I will take our reporters' stories and the sound that they've gotten, the interviews that they've gotten, and kind of craft a commercial to kind of push viewers to our show at 11 o'clock. I've worked a morning shift where I would have to come in at 2:30 in the morning and and read and write scripts, be ready to go from 4:30 to 7 for our morning show. But then you're done at 10 a.m. So I've worked the extremes pretty much all of my career.
Right. So can you tell me, what is the one thing that you have learned the most throughout your journey of being a news anchor?
One thing I've learned the most is that you never stop learning, and technology and news is constantly evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And that you always have to think of new ways to do things, new ways to get creative. When I started in this business back in 2003, using cell phone video on a newscast was unheard of. Now, it's not uncommon if we're short on photojournalists one day that like our reporter will go out and shoot their entire story on their cell phone. So it's just amazing how things are constantly evolving and changing. And in this industry, you can't be afraid to try something new. It might not work, but you have to be able to step outside of your comfort zone and try something different.
What is the most important thing, in your opinion, that people don't understand about your job? Because I know we sit at home every night and we're watching the news and they look so polished and so professional and they really know what they're doing. So what do people like that are just sitting at home watching it not understand about your everyday job?
So as a woman, I would think the thing that I get asked the most is, do I have a hair person? Do I have a makeup person? And the answer is no, I don't. Network levels, so like the Today Show and Good Morning America, they will have them. But as a woman, that's a question that I get asked the most.
Right.
Just as from a journalistic perspective, I would think that something people don't realize is that you have to be able to roll with the punches, because sometimes stuff goes wrong. Sometimes stories don't make it in on time. We have to be able to think on our feet. And really recently, with all the politics, at least at my station and in my experience, no one is telling me what to say. No one is telling me what to believe. We really do try and stay neutral and unbiased. And like I said, I can only speak for my station, but we really pride ourselves in making sure that we do tell both sides of the story. And there's no one controlling us, no one telling us what to say or think.
Right. So on a more informational note, can you kind of tell me everything that has to go into a show, not only like your job and what you have to do, but all of the other people that have to make it a reality and have to be there all of those hours to make sure the show is ready and your scripts are ready and you're ready. So can you just tell me a little bit about the others that are a little bit behind the scenes?
Sure. So our 11 o'clock newscast is our shortest newscast of the day. It's a half hour. And just to give you an idea of how much goes into, like I said, just a half hour, we have myself and my co-anchor. So we have the two news anchors. We have our chief meteorologist who does the weather. We have our producer who puts together the shows. And so she will find the stories that she wants to run. She will write them up for us. And then we go back and fine tune and tweak. We have an executive producer who's her boss and make sure that if she needs help, if there's breaking news, if there's something that needs to be done, she kind of oversees the show. But also she's also in communication with our three reporters who are gathering their local stories, their local information that they're working on. I can't remember if we have 2 or 3 photographers that are with those reporters. We have an online web person who's in charge of pushing out information about our upcoming newscasts during like Wheel of Fortune and during our primetime shows. There'll be like a little one-line banner that goes across the bottom of the screen, getting people to come watch. So she's in charge of that. She's in charge of listening to our radio scanner. That's just in our newsroom. Then we have our production people. So we'll have an audio person for the show. We'll have a director who's sitting there telling them, okay, pull up Lisa's mic. Okay, put her down, roll this story, roll that. Then you have a technical director who's actually the one pushing the buttons that the director is telling them to push. We have a graphics person. We have our teleprompter. We have our camera operator. I think we have our editors. We have our feed room that takes in all of the live shots from, you know, our different reporters. So we have a lot of people that you don't even think about until you're having to go down the list of everything you need to put a newscast together.
So it sounds like you're obviously around a lot of people all the time at work. So how important are interpersonal and personal relationships in your field of work?
Very, very. You never want to, I mean, they're all professionals at my station. It's kind of, you know, a joke that you like never want to get like the director mad because he might punch up the wrong shot or, you know, punch you up when you're like scratching your nose or something.
Right.
But I would say that beyond joking aside, especially when there's breaking news, you have to be able to communicate like what you want, what's going to happen, because everything that you had worked on for that show is essentially being thrown out the window and you're having to kind of roll with the punches. And so you have to be able to trust the people that you work with and trust their judgment and that they know what they're doing.
Absolutely. So, for example, you have an 18-year-old student that is wanting to be what you are right now. So what is your most important piece of advice that you would give them prior to going into college? So they're majoring in journalism and they're ready, but what is something that they can't foresee that's going to happen that you could maybe enlighten them with?
Always apply for internships. That was one thing that I did, but I feel like I could have done more with. And so when I got my first real job, yes, they had taught me everything from a textbook, but actually seeing it play out and how it's supposed to operate was a little eye-opening for me. So I do wish that I had taken more advantage of internship opportunities. I worked for a small college station and I did a really small internship with the Fox in New Orleans one winter. But I do wish that I had done it at a variety of different stations because different stations do it differently. And in this business, so much of it is about networking. When you are looking for a job, you know, who do you know, who can recommend you, who can get a foot in the door? Because you have to be able to stand out against a stack of resumes and video reels. And so if you do have someone that has a personal connection, it's always helpful.
Right.
So that's my biggest piece of advice. Take advantage of internship opportunities or even just shadowing. It doesn't even have to be like a full semester. Just getting in there on a weekend or, you know, on a long holiday weekend will be helpful.
And then we don't have too much time left, but can you tell me how your job experiences have grown from 2003 to right now where you are in Florida?
So I started out as a weekend reporter and was like the low man on the totem pole. And, you know, they would give me, you know, when you think of like the Anchorman movie, like the cat parade, like cat fashion show, like those kinds of stories, they, you know, because you wanted to give the stories with a lot more levity to your seasoned reporters, sometimes your anchors. And at some point, you start to earn the trust of your news director or your boss, and they'll give you those opportunities. Now, as one of the main anchors here at my current station, if there's major breaking news, like for example, the Pulse nightclub, I was sent out there and I field anchored from that. So, you know, America's Got Talent, I was flown out to LA for that. So my station, because of the experience and because of being here 6 years and proving myself, gives me opportunities as a journalist to show that they trust me, because it also gives your viewers chance to for you to earn the trust of your viewers as well. They need to see you in those roles, and that when they turn on the TV, if you're giving them information, if there's breaking news, they know that they need to listen to you, that it's important information.
Yes. Can you give me one example through your whole journey, like the one time or the one event you had to cover where you were most proud of yourself for making it that far and getting to cover that event? Your most fond moment of your journalism career?
Gosh.
I know it's a tough one.
It is a tough one. And because there are some that you know, my station has won several prestigious awards, Emmys, Murrow Awards. So always when you're a part of that and your work is recognized, it's certainly, you know, satisfying from a team perspective and from a station perspective. From a personal perspective, you know I keep going back to it, but I think it's because it was one of those moments that like I will never forget. And, you know, covering America's Got Talent, and we're there on final night, and Simon Cowell like pops up behind me, and I'm in the middle of a live shot, and I didn't know he was there, and he just kind of tapped me on the shoulder, and we just like rolled with it and went with it. And you know, that's one of those moments that you dream about as a little girl. You're on a red carpet.
It's
you
crazy.
know, you're interviewing Simon Cowell. Yeah.
Yes.
And so that probably is, to this point, just a personally satisfactory story that I got to cover.
Well, I know I would have fangirled totally and not even been able to do my live shot. So that's just amazing.
It was hard not to.
Yes. It's just amazing that through your whole journalism career, you've worked and worked and worked, and then you get to cover America's Got Talent, and then Simon Cowell taps you on the shoulder. Like, what? It's just crazy.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for joining the ride along and doing this. We're probably going to reach out to you again. We really are so grateful. And so if you have any other piece of advice or something you want to say to close us out, you definitely can.
I think the biggest piece of advice that I would tell you if you're pursuing a career in journalism, first of all, you don't necessarily have to have a journalism degree, whether it's mass communications or speech or, you know, a lot of times now you'll see lawyers and doctors as journalists because they give a unique perspective. So don't feel like if there's, you know, not a journalism option at your school or you don't know if that's the route you want to go, don't feel like you have to have a journalism degree in order to become a journalist. But I think the biggest piece of advice I can give, and not just for a journalist, but one of the hardest things to do, is to trust who you are, and don't be afraid to let that person show. As a journalist, don't be who you think people want you to be. And then the other piece of advice is you're going to have a little bit of thick skin, because you're going to figure out pretty quickly that you're not going to please everybody, and that's okay.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for tuning into this episode of The Ride Along.